William Kristol has been a vocal supporter of intervention in Syria. He is the editor of the Weekly Standard. Bill, good morning.
Hi, Charlie.
You have raised questions about the character of the assault. You've also suggested the president should have intervened about 2 years ago. So the question is, what is it that this assault, if Congress approves and the president goes ahead, what should it be and what should the goals be?
It should be enough to really do damage to the Assad regime, and I think ultimately allow the rebels to remove Assad. The best way to prevent the future use of chemical weapons by a dictator who's used chemical weapons is to remove that dictator. And I think that's in our strategic interest. He's backed by Iran. It would help our credibility throughout the Middle East if we don't just do a pinprick attack. And I think this has been Senator McCain's concern and the concern of all of us hawks, but a serious attack. I think the indications are that the president may be planning to do a little more than one would have thought a week ago.
And if, in fact, he does, what will be the response from Russia, from Iran, from Hezbollah?
Well, they can try to respond, but I think the U.S. can take care of itself in those circumstances. And look, I mean, they're already fighting. There are 100,000 people dead. Iran and Russia have the upper hand. The choices are for us to let them have the upper hand. Let Assad, think about that. Assad uses chemical weapons, an Iran-backed, terror-sponsoring dictator, 100,000 of his own people dead. Then he uses chemical weapons, and we do nothing. I mean, that really leads to a Middle East and a world, I think, that's almost unimaginable.
We keep hearing, though, that the American people are not on board at this particular time. Do you think that more should be done, or that their feelings should be factored into this, and should more be done to convince them?
The American people weren't on board in 1990 when I was in that first Bush White House, and we had to mobilize people and win a vote with the Democratic House and Senate, incidentally, to support the first Gulf War, which I think was the right thing to do. They weren't on board really in intervening in the Balkans. That was a messy fight in 93, 94, 95. Clinton dithered. Finally, he intervened. It was the right thing to do. Some people say, well, it's so late, you can't do any good now. I don't agree with that. I mean, better late than never, in this circumstance.
The talk seems to be that there's this, well, let's just aid the opposition and the rebels, and then they can sort of take over, as if there is an opposition. There is not a unified opposition against Assad. In fact, as the Wall Street Journal points out today, they haven't delivered the arms that were promised 3 months ago because there's no clear pipelines. And there's a real concern about the types of rebels and their affiliations with al-Qaeda groups about getting those arms to them. Isn't this really about trying to do something, but not really toppling Assad? I mean, that's what seems to be the goal of this administration, whether it's laudable or not.
I think that's the goal of some, but I think that's a mistake. I think that's just too
cute
by half.
Who would you suggest takes over for Assad?
Well,
if Assad is gone, who then leads Syria?
Look, you never know, and as you didn't know in these other circumstances when we've intervened, at the end of the day, the choice is, and maybe people can make the case if they want to, that it's going to be worse with opposition that does have some al-Qaeda elements, many more than it had a year or two ago if we'd intervened then. I think if we intervene, there are plenty of decent people, too, in the opposition. I think we can help shape the outcome. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be beautiful, but it's better than letting Assad stay in power.
So you're saying the goal should be a regime change?
I think the goal should be regime change. The president's going to say the military goal is merely deterring and punishing for the use of chemical weapons. But I think if we deter and punish enough, we could lead indirectly to regime change.
One quick final point.
Yeah.
You believe that the president will have Republican support in the Congress, especially in the House?
It's very tough. They distrust this president, and he has bungled this over the last few months. It's going to be a tough sell, and they need to make that case. They cannot sit back and just assume that Republicans are going to ultimately, do. I think the Republicans will do the right thing. It will be a reluctant yes. It will be a yes, but, and they'll want to maintain the ability to criticize the president, as they should, for not doing enough if he doesn't do enough. But I think a yes, but for Republicans ultimately is the right vote, and I think actually politically for them ultimately a better vote than simply a no.
Bill Kristol, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora.